Hey, what's up, everybody? Jason Swenk here with another episode of the Smart Agency Masterclass. I have my good buddy and agency scale specialist, Darby, on the podcast with us. Darby, what are we talking about today?
Well, I didn't tell you before we started because I wasn't sure how you would like it, but I wanted to flip it around. I want to do the interview today, and I want to interview you.
Oh, shit.
I think that has that ever happened on the show?
Nope. First one.
All right. Well, I mean, I'm thinking that there's probably plenty of listeners that know little about your agency background, right? I imagine people have been referred or however they've come to the podcast, but I imagine there's plenty that have followed content over the years and maybe some of your YouTube videos and stuff like that. But I think it'd be cool just to kind of flip it around and have you be the agency owner, kind of sharing his story and telling us about what you've learned over the years and how that may benefit the listening audience. So what do you think?
Go for it, man. Let's do it.
All right. Well, cool. Well, Jason, great to have you on the show. Tell us who you are and what you do.
uh, Jason, I'm a husband and I'm a father of two amazing boys, one who's about to start driving. And like God, this is so weird getting on the other side. This is very
That's why I
weird.
didn't want to tell you until we were in it because I didn't know how you'd react.
Yeah, created an agency by accident, probably like a lot of you. I did website making fun of one of my friends, looked like Justin Timberlake from NSYNC. Created a fake website, fake band called In Shit. Got popular, and then grew the agency and sold it. I don't know what else
So
to tell you.
when did you start your agency? What year was it?
1999.
1990. And what year did you sell?
I sold in end of 2011.
Okay, so 12 years you own the agency. So tell us about the first couple of years. You know, how did you break the million mark? What took you what did you have to do to get to that point?
You know, probably for the first couple years, we didn't break the million mark. We were kind of just struggling. And I think if I look back at it, I think it was really because we didn't have a main focal point, right? We were being reactionary. I had a couple people coming to me from, the in shit website days. And then like I got a realtor, I got a lawyer, I got a marina. Like it was just all random. And I think until we started really honing of like, here's what we do really well and what we want to do. And these are the people we want to go after. We struggled because everything was based on referrals. And like I always
Mhm.
tell everybody, referrals just aren't scalable. And so when we got focused, that's what allowed us to get over the million mark. And when we started bringing in the right people, I was the one holding the company back because I was doing everything. I was doing sales, I was doing delivery, I was doing project management. I had to offset a lot of those things.
What was the first big hire that you made that you felt the impact from as the agency owner? What was the first hire that really changed how you were able to do what you needed to do?
It was kind of funny. Like I put my computer on do not disturb and like all the dinging before. That was the key hire texting me, like literally. and Scott, I'm still friends with him today. I hired him as a web designer, and he was amazing. But he was way more than a web designer because he eventually was our VP of operations and ran really everything. And I remember when I brought him in as a key designer, he was kind of doing a lot of the project management and managing people. And he kind of moved up. That was our first key hire and probably our best hire in our agency.
So when you brought Scott in, how did that shift your focus in what you were doing each day? What were you able to do that you weren't able to do before?
Well, I felt like I was in this roller coaster, right? I would need work. So then I would focus on sales. And then I would focus on sales and then I need to deliver, right? And so what he allowed me to do was really concentrate fully on sales because he could focus on the delivery. And I think looking back and when I work with agency owners, in the mastery and all that kind of stuff is I go, well, what's your skill? Like, are you better at sales? Are you better at operations? Are you better at marketing? Whatever it is, you should do that and then hire other people to do the stuff that you're not that good at.
Okay. So at what point were you able to hire for sales?
It was probably another year that went by. And then I brought in my friend Gene, who he's going to do a what's working for the mastery in a little bit. I'm still friends with most everybody. But I remember bringing him in, and he was just consultative, very much like you, right? Like ask the right questions, like position, ask the right questions in order to determine what do people need and then position that and be more consultative. Like I truly believe anybody that is really kind of sales driven for their agency is mistaken. And I think anybody that's kind of harping on that, I think it's a mistake because you're just focusing on selling someone something that you want rather than being consultative and thinking about how can I actually help this person and what will actually help them and provide them valuable advice, even regardless if they work with you or not. Like when we started doing that and when Gene started doing that, that's when we really started taking off.
Cool. So at what point, let me backtrack. So like a lot of agency owners, you stumbled into this by accident, right? You figured out how to do something, it was cool, people recognized that it was cool, and then you woke up one day and you're like, holy shit, I have a business here. At what, at what point did the exit become part of the plan?
Well, the exit was always part of the plan in the very beginning. Now you got to think when I started the agency, this was in the .com era, right? And I saw all these people selling for millions and millions of dollars before it was billions of dollars. And I was like, oh, that's really cool. Now I was 22 when I started this agency. So I was young and dumb and stupid. Like I was like, oh yeah, I'll do this for a year and then sell for millions because that's what was happening. But then as the dot bomb happened and then also 9/11, I realized a lot of those big companies went under, but then I really liked it. Like it was like these were the people I hung out with and we were having so much fun and we were working with all these cool clients. I was like, no, I never want to sell. And then I started getting to a point where I remember talking to because I remember talking to, I've never told anybody this. I remember talking to our CPAs. It was me and my business partner, and we were setting up Solar Velocity at the time, and he goes, "Well, what do you guys want? Like with the business, are you wanting to sell this one day, pass it to your children?" I was like, "Sell the damn fucker." My business partner was a little bit older than me. He was like, "Well, I'd like to pass it down to my kids." I'm like, "Man, that's a long time. Like, you don't even have any kids yet." And yeah, so it's amazing how that shift changes over the years. Like, I mean, when you're doing it 12 years, you change quite a bit. The agency changes quite a bit. You outgrow a lot of people. Sometimes the agency outgrows you, that kind of stuff.
Okay. On our last mastermind call, we were talking a little bit about, the looming recession, or, what people are calling recession, but not seeing signs of. And you asked everybody in the group who was around in 2008, which you clearly were. You're at 8, 9 years into the agency. So at that point, if you can remember roughly, what was your revenue range at that point in time, and how did you navigate that?
Yeah, we were a couple million at that time. I actually remember I was coming out of a meeting in one of the financial districts in Atlanta with my business partner. And I remember looking at one of the TVs and seeing like the market just going boom, like just blowing up in the wrong way, like going down. And I remember going, oh man, like you remember, and I went to Kirby. I go, you remember when the 9/11 happened and everyone started pulling back, but we really started investing more and we grew. I was like, this is going to be the same thing. And I remember saying to him too, like a lot of people are going to be pulling back. If we can really get even more focused and find more strategic partners and really kind of almost going to, like we always talk about to the mastermind members, coming up with your top 100 list. Like, who are the
Mhm.
people that we know needs our help, that we can help, that can pay our fees? And we made a list and we really started attacking that. And in 2009 was, we grew every year, but 2009 was a really big growth year. I think we grew by 50% or something like that. And that just kind of catapulted us to, we were able to pick up amazing team members for prices we probably couldn't afford a year prior just because everyone was doing layoffs. I think in 2000, because we weren't out of it in 2010, if I can remember, we bought a small agency in Costa Rica in order to get a little bit more efficient on some of the things that we're doing. So we just looked at it the opportunity rather than some people are kind of freaking out and saying you got to pull back.
So, did you experience a lot of churn at that point in time where people were having those knee jerk reactions and pulling budgets or freezing budgets? And, how did you respond?
Well, we'd have conversations. I got ahead of those conversations, right? So I would say I would go to, a Georgia Pacific or wherever and saying, look, your executive team may be starting to freak out because of X, Y, and Z of all the news talking about a recession and the stock market crashing. But I told them like when everybody pulls back, that's kind of when you have that opportunity to kind of leapfrog a lot of people. And I'd say, do you want to leapfrog them? Like what we're doing here can actually help you catapult. And so we'd get in front of those conversations. Sure, we had some, churn, but when we made that list and we started going after, what we realized was the people we were going after, we were charging more than double than some of the current clients. So some of the churn was actually good because that freed up resources so we could replace it. And now we're getting paid double the amount of the fees.
So, looking back over all of the decisions you made and everything that transpired over the course of your 12 years there, and I think there's probably going to be a lot of answers. So, if you could limit maybe to the top two or three, what were the dumbest things you did?
Oh God, when's this show end? you know,
That's why I prefaced it with just give us the top two or three.
oh, I remember I got rid of one of the sales guys, and I didn't give them a chance in order to. There was another teammate of ours named Scott, and I remember I got rid of him just because he just wasn't producing after like a month. And I didn't have a conversation with him. I was just like, look, we're doing that. Like, he was a really good salesperson for a like a really big agency. And looking back, I bet I could have, like, knowing what we know now, right, around the offering ladder
Exactly.
and like giving them case stories and some stories and modeling and that kind of stuff. If I could go back and give him that, that would have been right. But then I also brought in a lot of people from bigger agencies. But the big mistake there was feeling that they would be as resourceful for a smaller agency like ours. It's kind of like that. What is it? Not is it Office Space, that movie where they're like the TPS reports and
Yes.
they
Yes.
take this to this person take, like, there's so many different steps. I
See
felt
my
like,
stapler?
yeah, the stapler. I just felt like when I hired from a bigger agency, I thought I could catapult up to that level, but those people were not resourceful. And I realized then I needed to hire more on core values rather than bringing on those people from the very top. I mean, those are probably the things of just not giving the tools to the team that they needed. And like now too, it's kind of like, when I brought on you and when I brought on Stacy and when I, building this team, it's like I had a different mentality when I was building the agency. I felt like they worked for me rather than me working to make you guys better, right? Like, so those were some of the things I did wrong that, looking back. And then the last part was realizing I'm not a good manager. Like, I need to hire people that are good managers that don't need management. Like I can give them guidance and coaching. So really realizing what my strengths were and what my weaknesses were, and like don't work on your weaknesses, just work on the strengths.
So, talk a little bit about the sale of the agency. Obviously, there's a lot that goes into that, but
Yep.
if you, for anybody that's listening that's considering either selling their agency or they're in the process of selling their agency, what would you recommend that they do to cover their ass?
Well, you got to figure out why do you want to sell the agency. I think a lot of times, we were talking to one of the mastermind members. He was a little frustrated from his team, and he was like, oh, "I just want to sell," right? Because he's frustrated. So you got to think about like, if you could get rid of that frustration, would you still want to sell? I believe only you should only sell the business if a couple things happen. One, you just don't like it anymore, and there's like no course correction to making you like it. Two, you need the money maybe for health reasons or something like that, or there's a bigger opportunity for it that you want to try. Like those are the things, right? I think too many people come to us and go, I want you to buy my agency, or I want to sell the agency because I hate this, this, and this. Like there's all, but if they looked at it, sometimes they could take that one thing out. It's kind of like you're running down the street and you have this thorn in your big toe. Well, yeah, you're not going to want to run all the time, but if you take the damn shoe off, take the thorn out, well, you might enjoy running. And there's some certain systems that you can put in there, or maybe we had Dan Martell talking to the master yesterday, about what if you can get more time back. Like I feel we create these agencies by accident. We have no real focus, and we kind of build this wall around us, and all this agency burden is like on your shoulders. But if you can kind of take that burden off, hire the right people, create the right systems, surround yourself with the right community, then it gets more fun. It's more of like a chess match of like, let me move this piece here and let's see how it works. Ooh, that worked. Or, oh, that sucked. That provides me more work. I just see, I mean, when I sold the agency, one of the main reasons I sold the agency was, well, one, I was young and stupid still. I was early 30s, so I still didn't figure out life. I wasn't happy with my business partner, and at the time, amazing person, but the business outgrew him, and I didn't have the confidence to buy him out, or I never even thought about it to buy him out and to keep doing it, or I would still do it. So that was the main reason. I think a lot of times when we're chatting with people, they have partner issues. A lot of partners work out, a lot of partners don't, but they just go, there's some pain here, let me sell. And I think that's a mistake.
That's great advice. So, talk a little bit about how that led to what you're doing now with obviously the agency mastery and with Republics, and how you kind of went from agency owner to agency seller to today.
Whatever we do. Yeah, there's
We
still
just
not
talk to each other and goof off and have fun.
there's really not a name for it. Yeah, I mean, this business was created by accident. I literally, after I sold, I had a bunch of my old competitors in Atlanta reach out and were like, "Hey, how'd you sell? How'd you work with LegalZoom? How'd you work with Hitachi? How'd you get the best place to work in Atlanta and track the best talent? All that kind of stuff." And I basically literally just started helping them out for free. And then I remember my friend Gene, who I mentioned, who sold for me, he started coaching businesses. And he goes, "Well, you should start a podcast where you interview helping out some of these people, and you interview some of the people that were your competitors." I was like, okay. So I started doing that over Google Hangout for the people that remember Google Hangout. And then he goes, "You should turn into a podcast." And at the time, my only recollection of a podcast was I remember watching I'm a huge fan of Pat Flynn's with the Smart Passive Income, which you could kind of tell smart agency masterclass. Like there's some smart in there. And he go, but I was not listening to his podcast over iTunes or Apple devices. I was actually listening to it on the website. and I hated it. Like, I'm like, oh, I just see this thing kind of scrolling across. He goes, you should turn this into a podcast. I said, no, man, no one's going to want to watch a podcast. He's like, hey, dummy, uh, you know, you can just do it audio and like you can listen to it here. I'm like, okay, I'll try it. Like literally, I took that off. And so I started doing that. And then that led to more people. And this was 9 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And it started turning into people reaching out. And my wife at the time was like, well, maybe that should be the business that you do. And I thought about what I want to do. And I was like, hey, I never knew there was no one that could help. No one ever helped me at my agency. Like there was no person that had agency experience that could actually, that did what I wanted to do. So I was like, well, what if I just interview these people and then I start creating resources that I wish I had? And that's how I've always made the decisions for, what we do in the mastery or the mastermind or whatever, whatever the things that we were doing. I was like, would I have wanted this? Would this have helped me? And or like, no, this wouldn't help me. Like we're deleting this, and we've deleted so many things over the years, and more things, and it's been very rewarding seeing all these agency owners kind of get to where they want to go, whether it be creating more freedom in their agency where they can kind of pick and choose, or where they get to a point where they exit their agency and have life-changing money where now they can never make a decision based on money again, or they just love using their agency to create other amazing things. Like that was the whole reason we got into it, which was by accident. But I guess you just always got to look at the signs and then make the interpretations from there.
Cool. This turned out pretty good.
Yeah, thanks for
Not as painful as you expected,
interview
was it?
the very painful interview on the other side. Like I had no idea. That was pretty good.
Well, I
I'm
need
glad
some
you didn't tell
practice.
me. I
I'm
would have
still
said
figuring
no.
out this hosting thing, so I figured I'd take advantage of the opportunity as well.
Yeah.
So this has been great, Jason. Is there anything I didn't ask that you'd like to share with the audience?
Well, what I should say, and I always make fun of my guests that do this. I say, no, you ask me everything, but there's this one thing. So I'll do the
Exactly.
same thing. And then I'll end with where you should go too, and I'll add www on it to show you my age. But now the one thing I'll tell everybody is I want everyone to have clarity of where you're wanting to go. We're being too reactionary to what's coming to us, which means you're not in control. I want you to think about where do we want to go? What do we want to have happen? Who do we want to help? What does my life look like? And design your agency around all of that rather than having the agency define who your agency is and define you. If you get that clarity and get that help from people that can help you on the direction, you're off to the races. And then you can reach out to us by going to www dot agencymastery360.com.
Awesome. Thanks, man. All right, I'm gonna let you do the outro because I'm still figuring out this hosting thing, and you're way better than me.
There you go. All right, guys. Well, go do that now. And until next time, have a swank day.